Hello, Magic players and collectors. Welcome back to the Land Library. I'm your librarian, and today we're on Innistrad once again with the third province, Gavony. Gavony is the largest of the provinces, not necessarily by landmass, but definitely by population. It's also quite firmly under human control because the highly dense populations are much more difficult for the monsters to seize control of. But here in Gavony, the humans already have the control along with the numbers and training to ward off attacks from the vampires and werewolves of the neighboring provinces. But that's not to say that they don't deal with threats from within the province too. Due to that much larger population and much lower risk of being eaten, there's an abundance of buried people here for necromancers to raise, and there was even a bit of a problem with zombies popping up on their own after Avison's influence was gone. But now on to the landmarks. Gavony has a few major sections, the first of which is Thraben. It's a very large walled city, the largest city on the plain actually, on top of a huge mesa in the Lake of Herons, with access to the sea through the lake. As it grew, its walls kept getting added around the perimeter, resulting in the different sections of the city being sandwiched between huge walls like rings on a target. Some of the inner walls were repurposed after more walls were added, such as the Bloodless Wall, where captured vampires are chained up to face public humiliation while they starve to death, or the Child's Wall, which is covered in the names of generations of children from all across the plane, because it's believed that writing a baby's name on the wall will bring them luck and protection throughout their life. And at the center of the city is a massive cathedral, but it's not just the center of the city, it's also the center of the entire Avison Church, largely due to it being the location of the Hell Vault. The Hell Vault is a huge stone from the moon that Soren Markov crafted into a prison for the supernatural creatures of the plane. It had a very powerful ability to lure things in, letting Avison and the other angels there to simply wait for spirits and demons to show up, and then they could capture them and imprison them inside. Unfortunately, its ability to draw things in is also why Soren never received Nahiri's call for help, creating the grudge that led to Emrakul coming to the plane. And just like that, all good things must come to an end. And the divine protection of the church disappeared with Avison, leaving the city vulnerable. And we already saw what happens when that barrier goes down with Avabrook in Kessig. But this time, instead of werewolves, Thraben came under siege by a pair of necromancers, Gissa and Geralf Sessany. These twins were actually born here in Thraben, but banished from the city for an undisclosed reason, but presumably for fighting each other with zombies so much. And their motives for attacking the city were also undisclosed, but I'd garner a guess it was probably fueled by revenge. While Gissa stormed the wall with an army of zombies, Geralf snuck in and murdered their cousin and church leader, Micaius Sasani, and after breaching the outer wall, the zombie horde was then driven back by the city's guards, and Gissa was caught, making Micaius the only described casualty of the siege. However, soon after, Emrakul and her Eldrazi hordes attacked the city too, and Liliana lent an army of undead to help fight them off. Even the Voldaran vampires came to help the city defend against their common enemy. This battle ended with Emrakul being imprisoned in the moon, but not before a large portion of the city was destroyed, and Gissa got set free in all of the destruction. After these two invasions, basically all of the citizens of Thraben decided to just leave. Only Gissa stayed behind, raising many of the dead buried in the city, and the dead who were killed by the Eldrazi, and taking over the horde that Liliana left behind. When another necromancer, Wilhelt, whom was infatuated with Gissa, attempted to attack the ruins of the city with his own horde in an attempt to impress her, she was pretty disinterested and proceeded to absolutely kick his ass with her much better undead horde. After Wilhelt left defeated, Gissa grew bored of the empty city ruins and abandoned it too, which is how it remains. So, for some cards, Avison Angel of Hope, although you could probably include like all of the Avison cards, and Emrakul the Promised End are some pretty obvious picks, along with Gissa Glorious Resurrector, Stitcher Geralf, Gissa and Geralf, Wilhelt the Rock Cleaver, Thraben Doomsdayer, Thraben Inspector, and Thraben Watcher for creatures. Then, deploy the Gatewatch, Emrakul's Influence, Ghoul's Night Out, Imprisoned in the Moon, and Zombies Apocalypse for spells, the Hell Vault for artifacts, and most importantly the lands, which there are none, kind of, because there's a print of Clifftop Retreat that depicts Thraben, but I've counted stuff like that before as just an art instead of like an actual land in previous videos, so that's kind of just an art. Then there's a few maybes, like Ghost Quarter, which could possibly be in Thraben, like after people left, and Seraph Sanctuary, which seems likely that it would be at the central cathedral of the religion, but it's not really confirmed, and Vault of the Archangel, which I would presume is at the same place as Seraph Sanctuary, but also isn't confirmed. And while those last two would definitely be landmarks, they kinda don't count since I don't even know that they're actually here. Then the next area is the Near Earth. This is the lands to the south of Thraben, filled with towns and farmlands. Thraben might be a really big, important city, but it's still just a single city, and the Near Earth is where a bulk of Gavony's population lives. Despite this, there's actually not much that's happened here, other than people fleeing the other parts of Gavony, such as Thraben, to come here, except I do need to talk about Hanweir. Hanweir was a large agricultural village in the Near Earth, providing for much of the province, but they grew a bit disgruntled under the church's rule, so after rising tensions, Hanweir declared their own independence as a fifth province, also called Hanweir, and walls were built around the village. Their independence either wasn't taken very seriously or not noticed by the rest of the province, or even plain, because it was never really recorded by anyone other than the residents of Hanweir, and also their independence didn't really last very long. Emrakul's influence hit Hanweir pretty hard, starting with weirdly only twins being born, and then just kind of the general madness, and then everyone who entered the village not being allowed to leave, and it all ended in the physical village and all residents in it being merged into one giant Eldrazi ooze with a hive mind from all those fused humans. Little is known about what happened after the fusion, but the lack of information does kind of imply that it was never in any major battles or confronted as a monster to be slain, so it's highly likely Hanweir is still just out there wandering Gavony somewhere. Now on to the cards. We've got Gavony Ironwright, Gavony Silversmith, Gavony Trapper, Hanweir Militia Captain, Hanweir Lancer, Hanweir Garrison, Hanweir the Writhing Township, Near-Earth Pilgrim, and Near-Earth Chaplain for creatures. And actually, no artifacts or spells. So then for lands, we've got Gavony Township, which is definitely here, but a little too general to really be a landmark, and Hanweir Battlements, which is a landmark because it's just kind of the land for Hanweir. Then we've got a couple of maybes in Stone Quarry and Slayer's Stronghold. It's really hard to place where exactly these are, but they are both definitely in Gavony, and it feels like they're most likely here. Now there's just one last area to discuss, the Moorland. The Moorland is a pretty big section of the province, but it's one of the least populated areas on the entire plane, unless you count like monsters and ghosts, because then it's still probably about the same as everywhere else. It's basically just large swaths of undeveloped countryside with the occasional tiny village or abandoned mansion, and while never very populated to begin with, a lot of the people that were there left once Gissa and Geralf got banished from Thraben and moved into the Moorland. Geralf decimated the village of Trostad, making it his home base, and Gissa just kinda chaotically went wherever she wanted. The Necromancer twins started a war with each other, dubbed the Necro War, mostly just to compete and see who was better, and while they mostly just left everyone else out of it, it was still very annoying and potentially dangerous to the local villagers, causing most of the already few people to move to the Near Earth. But one group of people that were unbothered by the Necro War was the Demon Cultists of Westvale. There's not a lot of info on Westvale, but they seem to be related to the Skurstag cult, which is a demon cult operating secretly in Thraben, although the Westvale branch of the cult seems a little more open about their demon worship, because if the Westvale Abbey card is anything to go by, they just straight up summon Ormondal, the most powerful demon after Grizzlebrand was killed. Ormondal would go on to gain quite a bit of influence through the church, thanks to the cultists, but even he was no match for Emrakul, and lost basically all of his influence and returned to the demon realm. They tried resummoning him after all the dust settled from Emrakul, but they were stopped by the angels before they actually could pull it off. And that's basically it for the Moorland. It's still sparsely populated, but maybe has a few more monsters roaming around than before, like Geralf's super zombie Grimgrin and Hanweir, which probably came here after transforming because of the wide open areas. And for our final batch of cards, we've got Westvale Cult Leader, Moorland Drifter, Moorland Inquisitor, Moorland Rescuer, Grimgrin, Corpseborn, and Ormondal Profane Prince for creatures, and then again, no artifacts or spells. And for lands, we've got Moorland Haunt and Sulphur Falls for just kind of generic places, and then Westvale Abbey as a landmark, with a maybe in Evolving Wilds. This does seem to be somewhere in Gavony, and it also seems to be more of out in the middle of nowhere, which is probably Moorland. And that's all I've got for the province of Gavony. I hope you enjoyed this visit, and there's just one more Innistrad episode left to look forward to. If you've made it this far in the video, drop a like for turn, and subscribe for more Landfield content. If I missed anything, got anything wrong, or you just have questions, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next local landmarks with the last Innistrad province, Nephalia.